The fucked up thing about human psychology was that our brain will actually move us towards choosing unhealthy, harmful, shitty behaviors because we know them over helpful, generative, meaningful behaviors because they're foreign. So that's part of the conundrum of the human experience. We don't sabotage to get out of control. We sabotage to move back into control.
Born in 92 on the block with the Sharks. Come from a different cloth, y'all would get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo went to Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
Connor, do you think that most men avoid the truth because they know it's going to force them to change?
I think most men avoid the truth because they are afraid of it. They've been conditioned to live in a state of illusion. And yeah, I think to some degree, that's probably a fair assessment. Like the way that our brains function is that they're these big pattern recognition machines, and they prioritize and over-index for safety. And so safety is equated to familiarity. And so sometimes the truth is putting you as a man in contact with something that's undeniably going to create some type of change and transition. And our brain doesn't like that. Our nervous system doesn't like that. It wants to stay in the exact same place that it is right now in this moment. It wants to stay with the familiar patterns, the familiar behaviors, everything that you know. And so when a man's, for example, in a relationship, and he comes into contact with this truth of like, I no longer want to be in this relationship. Or maybe he's in a relationship and he's lost desire. He's not attracted to the person he's dating anymore. That truth is going to lead to the end of the relationship or some type of confrontation, some type of conversation. And he doesn't know how that's going to go. He can't predict how the conversation is going to go or what's going to happen after the breakup. And so that leads him to wanting to just stay in this place of safety. And this is why so many men are just stuck in complacency. It's like, it's almost, and I think this is a byproduct of modernity in some degree, is that we live in a culture that wants to sedate the masculine. It wants to sedate men because sedated men are more easy to manipulate, coerce. They're less threatening. They're less violent. They're less likely to speak up against atrocities and things that are bad or wrong within the culture. And so you want sedated men to a certain degree, right? And then you want men that are not sedated that are fighting for your cause. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying
No,
this.
I love this, dude.
Yeah.
What do you feel like was the truth that you were avoiding, if ever?
I mean, a couple of them. One was that I fucking hated myself.
You did.
I really did. I really, for a period of my life, I really did not like who I was. I didn't like the choices I was making. I didn't like the man that I was, for a long time. And I didn't want to come into contact with the truth that I was in a tremendous amount of pain. And I didn't want anybody to know about that.
Emotional pain.
Yeah, emotional pain, psychological pain, not physical pain. Like I didn't have back issues or anything like that, or like shoulder cuff issues. I had some challenges growing up. There was some abuse growing up. There was divorce. I kind of bounced back and forth between two family systems growing up. So my parents had me divorced when I was 3, remarried other people. They both had a daughter, both had a son, and then both had a dog. And so I bounced back and forth between these two family systems and didn't really know where I fit in. And so the big truth is that I was just carrying around a kind of confusion and pain of not knowing who I was, not liking what I did know about myself, and then feeling as though to admit that was to admit that I was broken and that something was wrong with me. And I think for the average man, that's the kind of conundrum that they find themselves in. Is they don't like something about themselves. They've been desperately trying to kill it off or force some type of violent change within themselves. It hasn't worked because you can't do that. And it leads you to what I call just a kind of pseudo initiation process where you create this breakdown. So a lot of men will hit rock bottom because they're trying to implode their life to see if they can get out of it. And so socially, we've stripped out, we've taken away initiatory processes for boys and men. And those processes were supposed to help you cross this threshold between being a boy and understanding that you are a man. And understanding that those two things are unequivocally different. They are not the same thing. There's different expectations, there's different responsibilities, you have to show up differently. And so there's a huge vacancy in our culture that doesn't usher young boys into manhood. And there's a vacancy of role models that model what it looks like to be a mature man in our culture.
Yeah.
And so what happens for a lot of guys is they are a boy that suddenly becomes a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old and sometimes a 40 or 50-year-old. And they've never had any type of experience that's put them into contact with their pain, their dysfunction, their shitty behavior, and nothing that's ever pushed them into a kind of mature adult masculinity or manhood.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they crater their life. And this is what I did. I cratered my life. I blew it all up. I blew up the relationship. I blew up the career that I was
sabotage.
in. Sabotage.
Yeah, okay,
I was, you know, I like I can joke about this now, but my joke now is that, you know, I dabbled in every addiction. I wasn't an addict in one specific addiction, but I dabbled in most of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it was too much booze, too much porn, womanizing, cheating, infidelity. The only one that I didn't really go down the path of was gambling. It just, you know, I lost a bunch of money at like 18 and was like, fuck this, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a lot of guys, especially young men now, it's like the biggest, fastest rising addiction.
Yeah.
You know, is gambling. And so, yeah, and so I imploded everything and had to come face to face with that truth.
It leads me to ask this, and I don't ask this in a way of like making an excuse for younger Connor, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I want to preface that in that way, but do you ever think like, hey, this is just the way younger Connor knew how to deal with all of the things?
Totally. Yeah, there was no other way, right? The only way to cope and deal with feeling, because at that, I really did feel broken. Like this is and this might not resonate with every single guy, but it certainly will hit home with some men really hard. Mm-hmm. I fundamentally thought there was something wrong with me. Like I really did. And most of that was stemmed from not really having any impulse control, you know, feeling completely out of control, saying, you know, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and then hitting snooze a dozen times and waking up at 8. You know, I'm not going to text that chick, you know, 2 hours later, you know, I'm sexting with her. I'm not going to watch porn tonight. You know, browser's open, all the fucking tabs are open. And so part of it was that I had no real impulse control over myself. One was because I hadn't really been taught how to do that. And two was because my pain was in the driver's seat. I was hurting.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so when you are suffering to that degree and your self-perception, your self-esteem, your confidence, your sense of self-worth is predicated on other people's valuation of you, their recognition, their acknowledgement, all that type of stuff, what ends up happening is that you outsource your self-worth to other people, and then what you feel internally is just this lack. It's this void. It's this constant questioning. It's this confusion and, you know, insecurity and self-loathing and shame. And how you deal with that is through substances, you know, through these behaviors that unfortunately have a dual purpose, right? Porn, you know, too much drugs, drinking, womanizing, that kind of stuff, the sort of traditional addictive behaviors that we deploy. Those coping mechanisms do two things. They help you to numb out and disconnect or disassociate from the pain that you're feeling, but they also reinforce it.
Yeah.
Right? They also help to keep it in place. Because again, your brain's a pattern recognition machine. It wants you to stay with what you know. And so the fucked up thing about human psychology that I realized at some point was that our brain will actually move us towards choosing unhealthy, harmful, shitty behaviors because we know them over helpful, generative, meaningful behaviors because they're foreign.
Yeah.
So that's part of the conundrum of the human experience, right? Is that we keep coming back to this, and I've talked about this before, but we don't sabotage to get out of control. We sabotage to move back into control. And so a lot of the times when a man is starting to create some change, he's starting to make some movement financially in his health, in his relationship with his girl, his sex life, like whatever he's trying to work on and build, and it starts to move into this unfamiliar territory, that's when sabotage starts to really come in. That's when the voice, the inner critic is like, you're not fucking worth this, or you're going to collapse this anyway. This isn't going to work out. And it starts to get stronger and stronger and stronger because you're moving into unfamiliar territory and you feel out of control.
Yeah.
And so it wants to pull you back into this known shitty behavior. And that's the hard thing with trauma, with pain, with having experienced abuse or abandonment growing up, whatever, people have gone through, is that it produces a set of behaviors that then become familiar. And even though those set of behaviors are harmful and hurtful, and we keep cycling through them and moving through them over and over again, and then we think that there's something wrong with us. So that's the cycle that I was stuck
in.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you had to get to where you are now, did you feel like you had to honor who you were and just like honor that sense of Connor, that person that you were?
I had to admit that some things happened to me that I was in pain about.
Okay.
Like there's a line in my book, the first line in my book is, a man's work begins with pain. And it begins by admitting the specific type of pain that you are in as a man and not negating it, not ignoring it, not pretending like it doesn't exist, because the masculine culture that we grow up in tells men you are going to develop strength by suppressing the shit that makes you look weak, right? Don't cry.
100%.
Don't be insecure.
100%.
Pretend like you have it all together. Those are the narratives. Those are the stories that we exist in. And so for the majority of men, they grow up in an environment where they're trying to push down and suppress weaknesses, insecurities, fears, pain, sadness, about a breakup or what happened in their childhood, whatever it is. And what that ends up doing is it doesn't produce psychological resiliency. It creates an emotional and psychological fragility because you're always having to hide the truth of what you're feeling internally. And that's not psychological strength. Like imagine that as a battle tactic.
Yeah.
Imagine that as a war strategy. I have all of these insecure, imagine the US military deploying this strategy. I have all of these weaknesses. I have all of these fears. I have these insecurities within my domestic security, but I'm going to fucking ignore them. I'm going to pretend like they don't exist. I'm just going to completely stuff them aside. Well, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
That's going to collapse your system because now you have foreign countries and entities that are going to infiltrate you and take advantage of you and blah, 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 right? It's the recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Now, for the human psyche, maybe it makes you more manipulable, right? But it's not that other people are going to come and take advantage of you. It's that you lack a sense of grounding in self. You lack a sense of self-worth. You end up lacking real confidence that's unshakable. And this is the state that a lot of men are in. They're just confused, they're lost. And part of that is because we've been convinced as men that our pain is worthless, it's meaningless, it is an enemy. And so at best, we should try and kill it off.
Yeah.
And at worst, we should completely numb ourselves out to it and have all of these strategies to try and push it down.
Yeah.
But the real psychological strength and emotional strength is moving towards those fears. It's moving towards that pain. It's moving towards the truth of your existence as a human being and saying, this is what I fucking went through.
Yeah.
And it's ownership over that. Because what you own emotionally, psychologically, physically, doesn't own you anymore. But if you don't take ownership over that as a truth, it does own you.
That's so fucking good.
So my pain in my past completely owned me. I was going to make a joke. Like, it was my dom, unintentionally, I didn't want that. I didn't ask for that. But my pain was the driver in my life. It made the decisions. It made the choices. It called the shots. And I think for a lot of men, especially the men that I work with, that I see going through divorce and transitions, and they're transitioning out of a career, they sell a company, they don't know who the fuck they are anymore. That's just the state of a lot of men, and unfortunately, they try and deal with it in the exact same way.
100%.
Yeah.
You mentioned like men being lost. I would be curious to know, is it that the modern man is lost, or are we avoiding that truth? Or maybe we're lost because we are avoiding the truth, right? But I'm curious.
Okay. I do think that some men in our culture are psychologically lost. They're lost in terms of not knowing who they are or what to do. But I think we've also displaced men from the cultural conversation. And when you look at the culture that we exist in, the society that we exist in, there's a large narrative that basically says men and patriarchy are the fundamental problem with the West, with society. And if we can just reform men, and we can reform masculinity, and we can reform patriarchy, then maybe they'll be saved. And so for me, it's a kind of repackaging of the Christian idea of original sin, right? In Christianity and Catholicism, you're born with sin.
Yeah.
You come into this world with sin, and you have to try and work it out and atone for it, and that leads to a kind of salvation, right? And that concept, that idea, has been kind of taken and repackaged within modern feminism and within certain political ideologies that says you as a man are born with sin. You are born dysfunctional. You're born with something inherently evil or wrong in you that you have to try and figure out what it is and then root it out and atone for it publicly and socially. And if you can do that, then you're better.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is that the cultural conversation has said men are the problem. There's something fundamentally wrong with men. You have to figure out what that is and atone for it. And it's also kind of saying, men, you've had power for so long, so you need to sit down and you need to move aside. The problem with that is that when you look at the data and the statistics, men are in decline in every way, shape, or form. Every single category that you can look at: education, the workplace, financially, mental health. All of these categories, men are in decline. We have less men going to university than ever before, less men graduating college or high school than ever before. We have more high school dropouts than ever before. We have like 7 to 8 million working men of working age in America that are not working, right? Between the ages of 18 and 55.
Yeah.
So they're eligible to work, but they're just not. We have more men living at home than ever before. We have more men that are sexless than ever before. We have more men not dating than ever before. So and in metropolis areas, you have women now starting to out-earn men in all of the major metropolis areas in America.
Yeah.
So when you look at the stats and you look at the research and the data, men are just fundamentally in decline.
Is that our fault though, as men?
But I think that this is part of the issue, is that I was on Chris Williamson's show.
I was just watching that
a couple times, and one of the things that he said is, men, there's this trope that men don't have problems, men just are the problem. And so there's this kind of circular thing that happens when we start to talk about problems that men are facing and issues that men are facing, right? When we talk about issues that women have or problems that women have, we don't, some people will blame women for those problems, but what we usually do is say, okay, what do we need to do as a society to help women? Do we need to pass certain legislation? Do we need certain grants? Do we need to create different opportunities for them in the workplace? Or what do we need to do to accommodate for women in some way, shape, or form? And when we look at the failings of men in society, we do not have that same approach. We say, what have men done to cause this? And that's problematic because in some ways, yes, we do need personal agency. Yes, we do need to teach men. Most of my life and my work is spent teaching men self-leadership. It's like, how do you lead yourself more effectively? Whether that's, leading yourself through childhood trauma and childhood abuse and abandonment or pain, or leading yourself in your marriage where you're making better decisions, leading yourself to get out of your porn addiction, and so we do need personal agency. We do need personal responsibility. That is absolutely necessary. And I think a lot of men, that's what they need to develop. But we also need social programs, social support. We also need legislation to support men. And I'll give you one example that's fairly widely accepted and talked about, and yet we do nothing about it. In the UK, they call it redshirting, and it's redshirting boys. And basically what it means is we know through research that young boys develop slower than young girls. So a young boy that enters into grade 1 at 6 years old, compared to a young girl that enters into grade 1 at 6 years old, he's going to be cognitively behind in almost every way, shape, or form. The average young boy is going to be cognitively behind. And so what they do in the UK is they have a redshirting program where they hold a young boy back. And some schools do this and some schools don't. But that's an example of legislation that we could pass here in the United States to support young boys to have a better chance. We could also have more recesses. We could also have more physical activity.
Yeah. It's funny because we do that in sports, but we don't do that.
Right.
Like you do that in college athletics all the time.
There you go.
And even beyond that now, right? Because it's just such a money play. Like I see it happening in specifically in sports, but it's so interesting to not see that. Although I will say, like, some parents that I grew up around made that executive decision for their kids.
Right.
Right. So
yeah, you as a parent, if you're informed,
yeah,
you know that, like I'm going to hold my son back. He's 5.
Yeah.
He's going to go into kindergarten. We're going to hold him back to make sure that he doesn't enter into grade 1 until he's 6, 7. And so, that wasn't a 6-7 reference, by the way, for all the Gen Xers.
It went right over my head.
Okay. I said it and I was like, man, some 20-year-old's laughing, right? He's like,
that's great.
6, 7.
Right over my head, but I totally got it.
I had a buddy of mine, he brought his teenage kids over and they're like 6, 7. I was like, I know what that means. They're like, what? No way. And then we're like going through all this slang. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, if you're a parent and you know about those things, you can do that. But generally speaking, what we do to support girls and women is we pass legislation. We recognize that society also needs to shift. So there's the individual that needs to shift and change. There's the individual that needs to take responsibility, 100%. And we as men, we tend to take that approach to our own detriment. Yeah, I have to figure this out. I'm the lone wolf. If I can't figure it out, it means something's wrong with me. If I need to go see a therapist or a psychologist or hire a coach, it must mean that there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Not, there's people that know more than me on these topics, right? We don't look at it from that way. And so I think we need to make it a little bit more socially acceptable for men to, hire people that know more than them and create certain legislation and social programs that are going to support young boys and young men. And, this is, maybe, I don't know if it's going to be controversial and get me into trouble, but
we can cut anything out.
Like love, hate, or despise the current administration. I think that one of the things that they are doing is they made a recent announcement about moving Boy Scouts of America back to just being boys. And I think that's great. I actually do think that we need spaces for young boys to learn from male role models.
100%.
And there's kind of been this, whether it was on purpose or not, there's been this systematic decimation of male spaces. Whether you think it's a good place or not for men to connect, attendance at bars in the UK and in the US has absolutely plummeted. Boy Scouts of America is not just for boys anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. And so you don't have these traditional spaces where boys get to learn from men certain skills that helps them to build self-esteem and self-worth and understand the value of being a man. And so I think that we do need to protect those kinds of spaces. And I think the challenge is that there's parts of our society and people in our society that see men gathering together as dangerous, as hostile, as, just about power. And who suffers for that is really young boys. When you look at, and I'll give you this one last piece, and then I'll hand it back over because I feel like I've just gone on a fucking tirade.
This is a masterclass, bro. Like I'm chilling.
1 in 4 kids in America are going to grow up without a father figure in the household, right? 1 in 4. When you look at the data, that largely doesn't affect young girls. Their grades largely stay the same. The dropout rates from school largely stay the same. The only thing that really increases is sometimes promiscuity and teen pregnancy.
Yeah.
Okay. But the majority, like, they don't have a higher likelihood of going to jail. They don't have a higher likelihood of self-harm. Like, largely their stats stay the same. Mm-hmm. For young boys, it's fucking catastrophic. They are 8 times more likely to run away from home. They're 10 times more likely to drop out of school.
Wow.
They're 6 times more likely to end up in jail, whether that's juvie or, in adult court.
Yeah.
They are far more susceptible to mental health issues, self-harm. I mean, you just go down the list.
Yeah.
So we can see that, and that's just one example, right? When you have a vacancy of fatherhood in the household, it disproportionately harms young men. But the problem is that that's happening in so many different systems and institutions. So it starts at home, absent father, right? Maybe he's not there because he's an alcoholic, or maybe he passed away, or divorce happened and he's not really allowed to see his kid, or, there's so many different circumstances.
Yeah.
But then that young boy goes into an education system, and that education system is dominated by women. And so, depending on the state that you go to school in, you are going to have 80 to 85% female teachers, especially in elementary school.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe in high school it's a little bit more balanced. It might be more like 65, percent women. But then you go into a college system, which is now dominated by women, right? There's going to be, by 2030, there will be 2 women that graduate for every 1 man.
Wow.
Right? So we are, and that's the inverse of what it was in the 60s, which is why we passed Title IX in the 60s, to allow more women to go to school. And I mean, there's also some permission there, that needed to happen. But just follow that, right? Young boy at home, no father, no male role model, goes into an education system, very few possibilities of male role models, watches TV. What does he see? 85% of the fathers portrayed on TV are fucking deadbeat clowns, right? They have no real masculine core. They have no real standards or ethics. They're a complete disaster. They're idiots.
Yeah.
They're not role models. Then he goes to college, female dominated. Then maybe if he's fortunate or lucky, or he decides, I'm going to do something about this, and he goes into therapy or seeks a psychologist, same thing there. 75 to 80% of psychologists and therapists are women.
Yeah.
So most of the spaces where young boys could learn and see masculinity, healthy manhood modeled, have completely collapsed. They're just not there. So the only hope for it is maybe some type of sport, that's like
literally
one last vestige. But even then, look what's happening in the sporting worlds, right? We want to have men and women compete together.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of collapsing of having these spaces that are, men only, boys only, women only, girls only. And I think that it is largely to the detriment of young boys.
Literally.
Because they have a complete absence and vacancy of any type of role models. And what happens is that they turn online. And you see all of these guys online. There's just this recent documentary of Inside the Manosphere.
Oh, I saw you post that. Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
I saw you post that, and then I literally turned on Netflix, and that it was there.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it yet. I want to watch it.
Yeah, super, super popular.
It was good?
But, yeah, I mean, that's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth watching. It's definitely kind of a hit piece on those guys.
Yeah.
But, culture and society says, why are all these young boys so drawn towards these types of men?
Yeah.
And the answer is right in front of them, right? It's like there's a complete absence of male role models within our culture and society. And we're disincentivizing men from being in the homes. We're disincentivizing men from being in some of those places. We're collapsing spaces and places where boys could see male role modeling.
Yeah.
And then we're wondering, where have all the good men gone? Right? It's like, well, we've stopped having the structure and a society to produce them.
Yep.
You know, so this is the outcome that you get.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I feel so seen right now in this conversation. I've never thought of this, and obviously you've been on the pod before. I don't think we went down this path though. You just made me realize I didn't have a male teacher. I might have had like 2 in high school. Literally 2.
right.
So like all of elementary school, like that's 8 years, 9 years, whatever that is, right? Like
Right.
high school, I think I had my freshman year, I think I had 1 male teacher, 2 male teachers. One was a priest nonetheless. So like that's a little different too.
Yep.
But like male role models. And it's funny because like as you're saying this, I'm thinking about it. That's why I latched on to the older kid at my baseball camp. And I was like, wow, like I want to be like him.
Yes.
You know, and that was short lived. It was 2 weeks of my life and then he disappeared and
Right.
that's it, you know? It's just like mind blowing to think about this stuff. Like, cause I literally have never thought about that till now. And as you're saying all of this, it's registering to me. Maybe that's why I'm more comfortable talking to a woman therapist than I am to a male.
Totally.
Like I've just never talked to a male about my feelings before. And
And there's stigma around that.
Yeah.
Right? Like talking to other guys about what you're feeling and what you're going through.
Yeah.
I do think that there's still stigma around that. And I think that's a bit of a tragedy because the truth is that if you can share what you're going through with another guy and you can say, you know, this shit happened to me, or I'm really fucked up right now because of X, Y, and Z.
yeah,
Then you have a much higher likelihood of knowing how to carry that inside of you. And you have a much higher likelihood of having a deeper level of competency with then talking about how you're feeling with a woman. What happens for a lot of guys, and the reason why they get into trouble, and I'm not saying this is you in any way,
Sure.
but the reason why a lot of men get into trouble in their relationships is that the woman that they're dating or married to is their only emotional processing outlet.
oh yeah,
And so their woman becomes a kind of emotional processing center where anytime he's feeling something, he can't bring that to the guys in his life. And so he's got no other place to take it. And so either he stuffs it down and then, needs coping mechanisms to hold it in, or he tries and brings it to her. And if that goes well, then what can happen is that cycle plays over and over and over again. Or you grow up with, lots of women around you. Maybe you got sisters, like whatever it is. Or you're in high school, you're kind of popular with girls, and you start to learn that, I can talk to women about this. But what ends up happening is that then again, you start to outsource those things. And what it does for a lot of guys is it builds this subtle and unconscious mistrust of men. And you start to have this line in the sand of our relationship can only go this far and no further.
yeah,
And for a lot of guys, it's really lonely, and this is why you see part of the reason why you see more men than ever are lonely. It's like friendship rates have gone down. It's like 1 in 5 men can't identify a best friend, in the UK and in America. 1 in 5. So if you look around,
that's rough to hear.
At 5 or 10 of the guys that it's like 2 of those guys statistically probably have no one in their life, no other man that they feel like they can go and talk to about just basic shit, relationship issues.
Yeah.
And the question that they ask is really interesting to get this data. The question that they ask is, do you have a male friend in your life that you feel like you could call at 2:00 in the morning for help? And if the answer is no,
they equate that to not
equate
having a
that
best
to-
friend or
yeah,
something.
because
Fuck.
that's the signal. Right?
Yeah.
And when I think about it, it's like, I got like, I got like a dozen guys that at 2:00 in the morning I could call. Maybe some of them wouldn't answer because they'd be sleeping because they got kids.
Yeah, you can still call them though.
You can still call them,
Yeah.
right? And if they did pick up, they'd be there in a heartbeat, right? Whether they needed to drive over or fly or whatever it is. So I think that that's part of the challenge is that we end up outsourcing our emotional processing to women. And that's, when you look at the structures that used to be around developing a man, they were quite robust. You'd have a traditional apprenticeship if you were going to become a blacksmith or a physicist or a mathematician. You'd have an apprenticeship where you would go and learn from another man who was exceptional in that field.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you can't have an apprenticeship or a mentorship with a woman, with a female,
Sure.
with a, a physicist that's a woman or anything like that. But there's something, again, that's within us as men that wants to learn, because we learn about how to be a man through modeling from other men. And so I said this on a show the other day, and I think it's still largely true, but I think for the most part, we've been living through the first time in human history, as far as I can tell, where what it means to be a man has largely been being defined by women. And what it means to be masculine is largely being defined by women.
Yeah.
And when you listen to a lot of men, especially in most major cities, what they'll describe about what's socially acceptable, what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, that's largely been told to them or taught to them by women, and not handed down by other men.
Yeah.
Not handed down by men who have gone through hardship, have faced their own shit, have become fathers, have become a model. So we really lack this kind of masculine elderhood within our cultures.
You mentioned earlier, like, vacancy in the household, like not having a dad around. I would be really curious to know if there's anything around like having a father present, but not getting what you want out of that dad. Mm-hmm. Right. Totally. Like, because to an extent that's also a vacancy, I would assume, right? Yeah. Like, I'm super grateful my dad would come home from work, play catch with me, all of the things. Never had a conversation about sex with my dad. Never talked about feelings with my dad. Also, parents went through divorce. So then another gentleman moved into my childhood home with my mom, and it was just weird, and I think about that. I'm like, you know what? I kind of shifted away from men, and I kind of like put myself in this little silo for years upon years of my life until getting into adulthood and like reopening that door. But I feel like that type of vacancy is something that impacts men as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So part of my background is in Jungian psychology, Carl Jung, and I created this archetype called Ghost Dad. Ghost Dad is like the quintessential dad that so many men in the 40s to early 2000s grew up with.
Yeah.
And that dad could be present. He could be there.
Physically.
He's around, but you don't know who the fuck he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a clue who you are. There's no real emotional connection. Probably doesn't say I love you very much. You may not even know whether or not he does love you. Yeah. And for a lot of men, there's a question of like, did you even want me? Why did you even have me? So there's varying degrees of that, but the ghost dad is one of the most prominent archetypes in our culture.
Yeah.
And so it's either the complete absent father who wasn't around for whatever reason, or he's kind of this nebulous ghost. And part of what that does to a man's psyche and the development of his ego and his personality is that it can't ever really fully form because he doesn't have anything to press up against. Like, the role of a father in some ways is for you as a young boy to have something to push against. I see this in my son. He's 5 years old. He just turned 5 last Friday.
That's awesome.
And
man.
He's constantly looking for something to push up against. Where are the boundaries? How do you act? Oh, well, you did that, so I'm going to do that, right? You did that, and I don't like that, and so I'm going to tell you I don't like that, right? So it's this constant, like, I'm trying to figure out who I am because I look similar to you. I have the same parts as you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to constantly figure out who I am in reference to you. So that modeling is so important. So if there's nothing there to push up against, I can't bring my anger to you. I can't bring my sadness or my grief to you. I can't tell you that I'm frustrated by you because, you'll yell or shut down or you'll not talk to me for days. Then as a boy, I can't fully begin to form a mature sense of self and identity. And so what it does is the ghost dad puts a boy's psyche into a state of like a holding pattern, like when you try and fly into LaGuardia and there's like, oh, we don't have a gate, to stand.
Sure, yeah.
And so the plane just like circles around, right? And in Jungian psychology, this is called the puer aeternus. And the puer aeternus just means eternal boy. And And so part of the challenge that we have in our society today is there's a lot of men who have grown up with either an absent father, he just wasn't there at all, wasn't involved at all, no male role models, or grew up with ghost dad. And so there's nothing there to push against, there's no modeling, and this isn't quite the right word, but it kind of stunts that man's sense of self, of who the fuck am I? And Friedrich Nietzsche had this great quote where he said, what's hidden in the father is revealed in the son. What's hidden in the father is revealed in the son. And what he was really pointing to is the things that are suppressed in our fathers, the things that are hidden, their grief, their depression, their anxiety, their emotions, their desire and longing to go out and conquer the world or explore an adventure. Those things start to get revealed through us, and they become a kind of material psychologically or emotionally that we have to contend with. But when you don't see any of that, you're kind of left with this blank slate of like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to contend with.
Yeah.
I don't even know who I'm supposed to be in the world. And so this is a kind of tragedy that's playing out within our psyche, right? It's like, I'll use one more example. And maybe some people will grab this and maybe some people won't, but it's coming out this summer. So I think it's a good example, but it's like in the Odyssey, right? Odysseus' son is without his father for 20 years. And the Odyssey actually starts with his son going through all these experiences, trying to figure out who the fuck he is, basically. Right? Because he doesn't know. He hears the lore of who his father is. He's trying to kind of live up to who that man is. In some ways, he's in a holding pattern because if his father dies, he inherits the legacy of his father by proxy. But he doesn't really know who he is. So he's trying to figure that out. And that's the case for a lot of men, you know, whether their fathers are absent, their fathers are there, but they're kind of vacant. It's almost as though their father is the modern day Odysseus who's gone in some way. And he's running around on all these excursions, trying to talk to the gods, trying to figure out through all these, you know, these challenges that he goes through to try and sort out, like, who am I in reference to my father? And, you know, who am I in this world since I don't have that direct contact?
Hey everyone, pausing this episode to share something with you. In a world of hyper competitiveness, I think the best quote that I can share with you is that there is no one in the world youer than you, and that is truer than true, which is exactly why I wanted to share with you today about Brand Builders Group. It's an organization I've been working with over the last few months. It is absolutely incredible, and today I am sharing with you the opportunity to hop on a free brand call with a brand strategist to help you break through the wall of obscurity. We are in a hyper competitive space at the moment, whether it be on social or with your podcast or with your blog or with your books or getting on stage. No matter what your endeavor is, this is an opportunity for you to hop on a free strategy call with someone from the team to be able to help you navigate the waters of making sure that you are breaking through the wall and taking advantage of all of the opportunities that you most definitely deserve. Again, there is no one in the world youer than you. So no matter what the problem is that you solve, there might be other people that are out there that also solve the same problem, but there is a strategy that can be placed into your initiatives that will help you break through that wall with speed. So I want to share this with you. It is freebrandcall.com/Matt LeBris. That is going to be in the show notes of this episode, whether you're tuned in from audio or through YouTube, whatever it is, freebrandcall.com/Matt LeBris. If we were to say like, hey, out of 100%, how much of that 100 is our responsibility to identify who we are versus have our father or our parents or our guardians kind of guide us to who we are? I don't know why that's coming up, but yeah, I'm just like
masculine. It's like a very male question. Like, what is the statistical? It's great. I mean, that's hard to say. I think it's very man dependent.
Yeah,
you know, depending on the situation that he's had with his father.
Individualized, you're saying?
Individualized.
Okay,
yeah.
understood.
You know,
Understood.
So like if your dad's around more and you kind of have a sense of who he is and he knows who you are, then the onus is more on you.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that a big amount of Jung had this concept of individuation, right? Which is basically the pursuit of the search of wholeness, right? Of trying to integrate ourselves fully. And that is 100% our responsibility. Culture, society, whatnot can influence it, can support it. But I think that the average man is and should take more responsibility over pursuing his truth. And when I say his truth, I don't mean it in like the spiritual woo-woo way. I mean, truth is reality. Reality is where truth is. And truth is where reality is. And reality and vitality are correlated.
Yeah.
So the more closely you can get in contact with truth and with reality, the more access to vitality that you actually have. And this is what men long for. Like we've always, throughout human history, you look at any myth, any story, you look at history itself, it's kind of a tale, if you look at it through the lens of men, it's kind of the tale of searching for truth. Whether that's truth out here about physics or, protons and neutrons, or truth in here and here. And I do think that we have a responsibility as men to take that search on.
Yeah.
To go within and start to understand who am I actually? And for some men, the first step in that is saying, I actually have no idea.
Yeah.
I really don't know. And that's to come back to the beginning of this conversation, that might be the hard truth that some men are really avoiding. Because it would take them off on the Iliad, it would take them way out into the unknown. But that's kind of what life is for.
I wholeheartedly
That's
agree.
kind of what life is for.
Yeah.
And I think I said this to a guy the other day, and I don't know if you've ever seen this spiritual meme, but it's the meme of a boot on somebody's head, and it looks like somebody's like stepping on their head, and then the next frame it pulls back, and they've got their hand in the boot. they've got their own hand in the boot, like pushing their fucking head down. And that's kind of the case of for the most part of human psychology. Is we're holding the boot on our head. We're doing it. And we have to start to really look at that and take ownership and responsibility for it. And as Jordan Peterson says, the truth can be its own adventure. Yeah. And there's consequences to that, and you have to be willing to pursue it honestly. Yeah. And you have to be willing to say, I'm going to go on this adventure, and I have no idea how it's going to unfold. And for most men, they don't want to do that because we live in our heads, we live in rationality. We've been indoctrinated into this bullshit notion that your highest value is your logical mind. And so you're completely disconnected from any type of unknown. And that used to be the territory. I mean, think about people that came to this country. They didn't know what the fuck was going to happen. Right. It was completely unknown territory. What a beautiful, brilliant adventure. And we've kind of lost this insatiable curiosity to venture out into the stars. Yeah. And you can do that inside of yourself. There's, I don't know, that was going to sound so cliche, but there's whole galaxies. It's true though. Yeah. Yourself, right? There's, you really can, and it's not that you want to navel gaze, right? But it's that you can really begin to understand the complexity and the nuance of this experience and this existence in human beings by just starting to ask yourself, like, who am I actually? Yeah. And what am I afraid to admit about myself? What don't I like about myself that I don't want to admit to other people? Yeah. What's true about me that I don't want to admit to other people? Yeah. What do I dislike about myself that if other people found out about, I'd be ashamed or I'd be embarrassed, and start to traverse what I call the shadow. Yeah. Right? This part of you that's insecure, that you perceive to be weak, that you're largely afraid of. And as you do that, you start to have a much deeper level of self-understanding, but you also start to mine for gold, for lack of a better word, because the strengths, the gems, the gold of who you are not in the places that you know to look. They are in the shadows, right? There's a great parable about this, of the man looking for his lost keys. I think David Foster Wallace. I've never heard this. Tells us at some point, but so this man, is looking for his car keys, and his keys for his home are on his car keys, and he's looking for them outside. It's pitch black outside, and he's walking from street lamp to street lamp looking for his keys. And somebody's walking their dog outside, and they come along and they're like, "What are you doing?" And he said, I'm looking for my car keys. And they said, well, where are you looking for them? He said, well, I'm looking for them in the light. And the person walking the dog says, have you ever considered that they're somewhere in the darkness? And that's kind of a great parable for what it's like to be human.
Yeah.
Is sometimes you have to look in the places that you do not want to, that you don't want to go, to discover who you actually are. And that's the quest for a lot of, that's the real skin in the game for a lot of men. It's like, are you willing to go into and venture into your fears, your insecurities, your pain, your fucking bullshit, you know, the way you speak to yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the way you treat yourself, the shit that you let yourself get away with. Are you actually willing to venture into that territory and have other men come along on the journey with you? Because that's also part of the Odyssey, right? Is that you're not just going on this quest alone. There are people that support you along the way. And that is unequivocally as important, right? That's equally as important as you going on the journey.
100%. It makes me think, like, when I finally woke up to my own bullshit and like really, this is, I want to say back in 2020, and hey, I'm still on the path, hope to always be on the path because I find it fun. But the minute I accepted the fact that there is shit that's hidden underneath all of these layers of perceived success and whatever it may be, like, the world cracked open in the most beautiful way. Like, I could actually cry right now and just like think back at that time. And I was so in denial of it for so many therapy sessions, just sitting, like dealing with all of this anxiety, like day to day, like literally like anxiety that I was scared to experience. And just hearing you say this, I'm like, it's obviously a very courageous move for any individual to face themselves in any capacity. It doesn't even have to be therapy, right? But how beautiful the world becomes, like, once you crack that open. Yeah. You know, and I'm like sitting here and I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like, I'm looking in a mirror right now. I'm just like, it's insane. Yeah. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. It's, I think the funny thing is that the average person works tirelessly to stay exactly who they are.
Why though?
It's, again, part of it is our wiring, our neurology, and part of it is the ego. So our wiring and our neurology wants to keep us in familiar territory.
Sure. Okay.
So it wants to keep us in, I know these behaviors, I know these decisions, I just know them. Yeah. And so even if they don't work, they're dysfunctional, we dislike them, our brain will still try and pull us towards that because it's classified, it's sort of labeled within the computer of our brain as something that's safe.
Even though that it causes pain.
Yeah, doesn't matter. See, doesn't matter because it's just, here's the thing, it's just familiar.
The pain's familiar.
It's just, well, all of it. Yeah. Right? The behavior, the choices, the decisions, the people that are involved, the sequence of events, it's all just familiar. And so your brain will pull you towards that. And this is the great sort of quest of being human, is that you have to actively choose and work to go and venture into the unknown actively. I'm going to start that business. I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. I'm going to start that, diet or nutritional plan. I'm going to start going to the gym 4 times a week. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm going to move to that city. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to ask for the promotion, whatever it is. I'm going to venture into this unknown territory, or I'm going to start doing shadow work and start to reveal the parts of myself that I don't like or that are hidden. And by doing that, you start to move towards this whole unknown terrain. Yeah. Right? It's like, did you ever play, I'm going to date myself. Did you ever play Doom?
Of course. Yeah, it was the first computer game I ever played.
Great. Love it. Also Duke Nukem. Great game.
Dude, great you just brought me back.
Right? Duke Nukem.
Time to
chew ass. It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum. I fucking love that game. Anyways, in Doom, as you explore the map, it becomes revealed. Yeah. Right? And when you first start on the level, it's all black. Yeah. You can't see anything. But as you explore the different rooms, you can see the map. And that's kind of what the human experience is like. The problem is that our brain is designed to keep us in the space that is revealed. It doesn't actually want us to go into the blank space,
Yeah.
right, to the dark matter or the dark energy of the universe, because it can't predict what's going to happen. So we as men have always developed a kind of resiliency and strength by venturing into the unknown, being courageous, being brave. I'm afraid to go do this. I'm going to do it anyway. Like, this is a principle that I teach my son, is do it afraid, do it scared.
That's important.
Every single time. Doesn't matter what it is, do it afraid, do it scared. You think you're going to fail? Go do it.
Yeah.
Because this is what helps to develop the masculine psyche. You know, Jung talked about the anima and the animus, and that was just basically, you know, another way of saying the masculine and the feminine.
Sure.
And the masculine is developed by constantly and repetitively pushing your edge by venturing as close to the unknown as you're comfortable with in that moment. Whether that's a hard conversation, expressing a need in a relationship, sending the email that feels uncomfortable. It's just finding that thing that's like, this feels uncomfortable. This feels, I don't know how this is going to go, but in my gut, I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And we've kind of ejected from our bodies as men, and we just live up here in the fucking hamster wheel. And we're completely cut off from the data and the information of our body, which carries a tremendous amount of data information.
Yeah.
You know, so much so that in psychology, there's something called the elephant and the rider. And the elephant is your soma, it's your body. It's your emotional information, it's your nervous system, and then the rider is your rational, logical mind. And if you think about it, and this is where a lot of men get messed up, the elephant has a lot more power than the rider.
Yeah.
The rider, if it wants the elephant to go in a direction, the elephant's like, fuck you, I don't care about that. It's just going to go where it wants,
right?
You know, and the rider can whip the elephant as much as it wants. It can shit talk it and put it down,
all the things,
and, you know, do whatever. And the elephant's just going to go in that direction if it really wants to. And so we have to start to reconnect with the wisdom, the information of the body, because when you look at your nervous system and you look at how the brain and the body are wired, there are way more pathways leading from the body up into the brain than there are from the brain into the body. So we have this perception that our brain controls our body, but there's actually 80% of the wiring that leads from the body, between the body and the brain, 80% of it is bottom up.
Whoa.
So 80% of the information is our body sending information to the brain. This is how I feel. This is what's happening, right? This is why, what do we say about communication? Communication is what? It's 80% nonverbal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean? It means that your body is communicating all the time. And there's a whole bunch of information that your body, your eyes, your ears, your nose, like all of it are putting out into the world that your mind is picking up on constantly. So, but we as men have been tricked into this notion that I call it rational supremacy.
Yeah.
That all that can be known and should be known is just in your mind. And so we disconnect from this wisdom that lives inside of us, which is your instinct, which is your gut, your intuition, right? How many times have you dated a woman and you're just like, your body's like, nope, don't do it. And you're like, oh, but she's fucking hot, you know? And you override your gut. And 3 weeks later, you're like, that was a train wreck.
Yeah.
You know, that was a disaster. It's like, well, you ignored your instinct that was picking up on data and information that your rational mind isn't quite able to codify or codex in a way that makes sense. But you just know unequivocally inside of you, this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to kind of get back to starting to learn how to read some of that data and that information. And that's part of emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
It's part of emotional mastery.
Absolutely. Dude, this is so good. I wish I asked you this question earlier. It was something that I was thinking about in preparation for this. I listened to our old episode. I listened to you on Chris's show and a few others, obviously a bunch of yours. And the question that kept popping up in my mind is, why is it important for a woman to listen to this? Or is it?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of women that follow me to better understand men. And
yeah,
I think that the part of the challenge in our modern culture and society is that there are a lot of women that want to tell men how how they actually are and don't want to understand how they are. So they're more interested in saying, here's how you are. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pathologize who you are as a man.
Yeah.
I think why it's important for women to listen to this is if they have a genuine curiosity to understand what it's like to be a man and what it's like to be male. And that perhaps what men want, what men need, what men desire might actually be different from them. You know, our culture teaches men how to treat women, but not what to expect from them. It says, here's how you treat a woman. You open the door, you pay for the first meal when you go on a date, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But don't expect anything from them, right? And not like that, but we don't tell men, here's what you can expect from a woman. You should expect to be loved. You should expect to be praised. You should expect to be nurtured. You know, you should expect to have, you know, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But it teaches women, here's what you should expect from men, and not here's how you should treat them.
Yeah.
Here's the laundry list. And social media is terrible for that. So it's taught women, here's the never-ending list of expectations that you should have from men, but it doesn't actually teach women, here's what men actually want, and here's how you can treat them in such a way that they will just fall madly in love with you.
Yeah.
So we've screwed the whole system up.
Literally,
you know, we screwed the whole system up. So there's a bunch of women that's like, here's my expectations. I saw the perfect example. I saw this reel of this woman talking about how she operates on the first date.
Oh God,
And
I can't even imagine.
like, I would just get up and walk away.
Yeah.
You know, she was like, here are the questions that I ask. And it was an interview, Matt. It was an interview.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not interviewing somebody to be an executive assistant for the rest of your life. You're trying to allow the mystery of love and intimacy to unfold.
The mystery doesn't exist in modern dating anymore, dude.
Totally not. But why should women listen to this? I'll give you more tactical reasons. One, because for many men, women are the permission card holders for introspection, for self-leadership, for going down some type of therapeutic or psychological path.
What does that mean? Like, is it like men are motivated when a woman's in their life to do that?
Partially. Men are motivated by it, but also, as you were describing, many men do not have other men in their life that they trust enough to get any type of permission or feedback to do introspection because it's, you know, whatever. You're gay, you're pussy, you're
all of the
something
things.
must be wrong with you. You must be fucking broken. So for a lot of men, women hold the permission card to say, actually, doesn't mean that you're broken. If you want to do some introspection, if you want to get your shit together, it doesn't mean that. And you might actually be better off to go and do it.
Yeah.
So for a lot of guys, how they might come into some type of introspection is through a girlfriend, a wife, an ex, a sister who sends them a book, who sends them a podcast, who says, you know, I think you really benefit from this, not because you're broken or I think something's wrong with you, but because I see that you're dedicated to being a good man.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's a huge part of it.
100%.
I think it's a huge part of it, you know, like a lot of men start to become who they are when either another man calls them forward, not calls them out, not like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But calls them forward and says, I know you could be better than this. Or I know you've communicated wanting to be better than this. Or they have a woman that says, I would really value it if you did this.
Yeah.
You know, or I would value it if you decided to do it. Or I wouldn't think less of you at the very least. I would still love you as much. Or, you know, it doesn't mean that you're broken or something's wrong with you if you want to be better than who you are right now. And I think what happens in a lot of modern relationships, unfortunately, is that women give ultimatums. You need to read this book or we're done.
Yeah.
You need to go to therapy or, you know, what's wrong with you? And so what men are met with is ultimatums.
Yeah.
And for most men, that's battle, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, now I'm not going to do anything.
Dude, modern dating in itself is a whole
That's
other
a whole
hour.
other podcast.
It's a whole other hour, man. It's wild out there, man.
It is.
It is a wild game out there right now. But hey, I have kept you for a little over an hour. I have two last questions for you. Before we get into this, I want to make sure that we are letting everyone know that podcast, socials, book, the Alliance, all of that is in the show notes. But talk to us about the Alliance real quick.
Yeah, I mean, we have like 1,100, 1,200 guys from all over the world that are in this community doing this type of work. They're building self-leadership skills.
Yeah.
Because this is just a competency. And so we do deep dives into attachment. We do deep dives into sex and intimacy and relationships and leading leading yourself, leading your relationship.
Yeah.
I've got courses, programs on there. They're all included in that. And then, we've got men's groups on there. I lead live calls. I do coaching. I work with men in there. It's pretty robust. And so, yeah.
Is it always open?
We open the doors 3-4 times a year.
Okay, I'm glad I asked.
And so it's like once a quarter we'll open the doors, and we do that because we have a cohort of men that join. So we'll have a bunch of guys join all at once. And they go through an initiation for the first 5 days, and it's not like university hazing or anything like that.
Yeah.
You go through, you've got some like basic challenges like breath work or cold showers, and you're doing it alongside other men.
That's cool.
And then you're getting to talk about like, here's what I'm here to work on. I'm trying to improve my marriage, or, I'm here because I'm tired of, beating the crap out of myself inside of my head, and I want to have better morning routines. And so you get to kind of say, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I want to accomplish. And then there's a pathway for you to go do that. So we actually have pathways inside of the Alliance that help you to develop relational skills, intimacy skills, communication skills, self-leadership skills. You can do shadow work. It's all in
I love that, dude. That is amazing. Again, we're going to make sure all of that stuff is in the show notes in the description of this. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical.
Please.
If I knew what you know, how would my life be different? I mean, you gave us a lot here, right? Like, this was a master class.
If you knew what I knew, how would your life be different? It's a bit of a complex question.
It is.
In the sense that the complex part is you would have a broader understanding of human beings in a way that both comes with a certain quality of responsibility.
Yeah.
And empathy, and like, I'm not able to turn a blind eye to people's suffering anymore. And that kind of sucks. When I walk through the world, I can see in people's eyes what they're carrying. And that's both beautiful and really hard.
I feel like I need sunglasses for this now, just in case you're seeing it.
And it's not that I have some special magical gift or anything like that. It's just, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've worked with thousands of men. I've literally sat with thousands of men like this, where they've told me about their trauma and their abuse and their pain and their hurt and the divorce and the death of their child. And I've become acutely aware of and tuned into when people are hurting. And so you would have a broader understanding of where somebody's coming from when they shit talk you online, or what they might be going through, or an understanding of why they made a certain decision. But that comes with a cost. It comes with a responsibility. On the other side, there is the good side, is a much deeper level of self-worth in a way that's largely unshakable. I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not that I don't care. It's not the right frame. It's that it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
What people think or say. It just doesn't. Because I understand who I am, and I know who I am, and I'm connected to who I am, and I value who I am. And so there's an ease and a quality of peace inside of me that I didn't know existed 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's part of the blessing, is that there's like an exhale that exists inside of me. And I'll end it with this. I watched this Buddhist monk, and he was being asked about happiness. And the guy said, "Are you happy?" Asking this Buddhist monk. And he thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and he responded, and he said, it's not the right question because it's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in peace. And I think that that's also part of the masculine quest. We think we want happiness. We're sold happiness. Culture sells us that we should be happy. But I think what the average man is looking for is peace.
And peace being like with self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, with self, that you're not, most men are at war with themselves.
Exactly.
They have a civil war happening inside of themselves constantly. Or they've disconnected from that and they've externalized it onto their wife or their girlfriend. And so they're at war with who they love. You know,
That's
so
good.
most men are either at war with themselves or they're at war with who they love. And that can be a spouse or it can be a kid. And that's the war. And so, you know, and it's not that I have achieved some bliss or enlightenment. I still get it wrong. I still fuck up. I still make mistakes.
You're still a human. I'm glad to know that. Yeah.
Like, all that shit happens. But the quality of peace and ease that gets to inhabit me on a regular basis is something that Can I share one last story?
Dude, we're having a podcast, of course.
So in my book, I write about this moment in my car. I wrote a book called Men's Work.
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk about, I hit rock bottom. I didn't want people to know about what was happening. I moved all my shit into storage and I lived out of the back of my 2007 Pontiac G5 and it was a banger.
That's a coupe, no?
It's a coupe.
Yeah.
It's a piece of shit. You know, it's got like chrome rims on it.
I remember that.
Somebody like, you know, tried to pimp it out. It was black. It had 2 white stripes down it. It had the big spoiler on the back, the big exhaust, you know, one of those, right? And I'm 6'1".
You're taller than 6'1", dude.
6'1", 6'2". I'm stuffed into the back of this 2007 Pontiac G5 and, you know, contemplating if I wanted to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm living out of the back of my car in a Walmart parking lot, you know, in Victoria, Canada. I fucking hated my life. I did not like myself. I just created everything that I knew. And I remember looking out of the window, out at the stars and seeing the stars that night and just being inhabited by just this contemplation of like, I don't think it can get any worse than this. And is this even worth it? And do I even want to be here anymore? And to think back on that, and there's a moment where, so to fast forward to when I found out that my wife was pregnant with my son. I had this moment, I was in Vancouver, and I started to take stock of my life, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I just started to break down not only because I was going to have a boy and I was going to have a kid, you know, I was super excited about that, but because I had made it through this period of time in my life where I didn't think I'd make it out. I really didn't think I would make it out. And it was a long period, man. It was a long period. You know, I can still feel it. I can still, it's like still tangible. You know, it was like 15 years of my life where I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's not that I thought about ending it, you know, all the time or anything like that. I know that's some people's experience. It's just that it was dark and I was really in a lot of pain. And so I had this moment when my son was going to be born where I was realized like I made it out of that period. And I made it out because I went into the cave, not because I went around it. It's because I went into the cave. I went into the darkness. I went into where the monsters and the dragons were. And I decided to enter into that space, that I learned how to find peace in the darkness, see in the dark. I don't know how else to say it, but so I think there's a certain level of ease and peace. And so when things happen in my life, it's not so catastrophic and it's not fake. It's not that I'm pouring a whiskey to try and, you know, numb it out or doing a bump of Coke or fucking smoking a joint or like whatever it is. It's just, it's a genuine thing. Yeah. Right. So, and I think that's what most men are looking for is that what they're in search of is a type of resiliency internally where more often than not, they can inhabit the realm of peace, the realm of ease. You get a flat tire, okay, right? Your wife's upset, she's disappointed because you forgot. Okay, got it. No worries.
Yeah.
The kid's pissed off, they're having a fucking tantrum. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not a repression. It's not an act. It's that you've learned to find peace in chaos. My favorite word, maybe this is a good place to end, my favorite word is equanimity. And that's just peace in the chaos, ease in the chaos, balance in the face of chaos. So, but what we as men do is we're playing the wrong game. We're trying to figure out, how do I eliminate the chaos? How do I kill off the chaos? How do I kill off the pain? How do I kill off or destroy my inner judgment, my inner critic, the way I talk to myself, my sadness, my depression, my anxiety? How do I destroy that? It's the wrong game.
Yeah.
You never will. You never, I promise you, I'm calling it right now, you never will. You have to learn a different tactic. And it just takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'm really grateful you shared that story. And it's funny, you like this feels super, super divine, like having this conversation right now, because that's what I have in the middle of my like 2026 vision. Like my calendar is just inner peace.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like that story in itself is worth this listen. Seriously, that was like on the money. I'm going to ask you one last question here, and there might not be an answer to it because you've given us so much. Connor makes it to whatever year he wants to make it to. You raise your kids, have this beautiful marriage, impact thousands and thousands of more people, whatever it is. But the day comes and we could only remember you for one piece of advice. It's not how you want to be remembered, but just specifically the advice. When we think of your name, what is it that pops in our minds when we think of you?
I'm really thinking into this.
Please do.
You know, I think what comes up for me is just, who do you want to be surrounded by in that moment? When you're at the end of your life and you're about to take your final exhale. I created this meditation for myself that is about the first inhale and the final exhale. And it's a practice of how many breaths have I actually been present for in between that. And so I think the big piece of advice is, have you lived in such a way where the people surrounding you on your deathbed, first off, that there are people surrounding you on your deathbed. And second off, that you've lived in such a way where you're surrounded by people that love you and that you have a kind of clear relationship with. You know, that you've done whatever it takes to clear the slate with the people that are around you, and that your life has been a representation of a kind of opus leading towards that moment. And that you've lived in such a way where you've been a vessel of forgiveness, of compassion, of love, of truth, which sometimes is hard, so that when you are in that moment, laying in the deathbed, that you can exhale for the last time and have some semblance of peace. That you are leaving this place without a garbage pile of regrets and remorse and contempt and resentments. You know, that's really, I think, if you can live your life in that way, I think there's something profound about that.
Dude, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. One of my tasks, well, I don't want to call it a task. That's a weird way to put it. One of the things that I want to make sure I do, and I don't want to sound morbid here, but the clock is ticking to an extent.
Fair.
I want to make sure that I clear the slate with my parents. You know, like that's one of the things I want to make sure I do. And that takes courage, man. Like that takes a lot of courage, and it obviously requires some form of, you know, reciprocation to an extent, if that's available. But you just saying that, I was like, fuck, I need to do this. I need to do it, man. I need to do it because time is short here. It goes quick.
It does.
goes fucking quick.
Yeah, it
you
does. It does. And to embody that, I think is, you're going to get it wrong, but as often as you can to just like, the reason why I say that is I think everything is relational in this life.
Yeah.
Everything is you have a relationship to self, relationship to other, relationship to love, relationship to money. Everything's relational. And so one of the core principles of attachment, like attachment theory and relationships is, can you go through a hard time with that other person and come out the other side okay? That's actually a core building block of healthy, secure attachment.
Yeah.
And so I do think that it's a noble endeavor. It's a worthwhile cause to say, can I live in such a way where it's not that I avoid hard times or I ignore hard times, but when the hard times happen, can I go through them with the people that I've chosen to have in my life or that God has brought me through my family?
Yeah. Yeah.
And come out the other side okay? And can I own my part? Can I be an embodiment of forgiveness and grace and compassion and understanding and love, such that when that time comes, I've done everything in my power to have the people that I love and care about surrounding me and at peace with me and themselves. That's a gift. And I will try and do that for my kids and for my wife. And we'll see.
Amen, dude.
I'll do my best. We'll see.
This was freaking great, dude. Connor Beaton, everyone. Again, make sure that you are checking out the Alliance podcast, book, socials, everything in the show notes, dude.
Thank you.
I owe you so much gratitude right now. Thank you for dealing with my persistence, number one. I'm putting that on record.
That's awesome.
And then also for such a great conversation, dude. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.